This right here is a book from every country in Asia. Welcome back to my series where I'm trying to find a book and then read a book from every single country in the world. And this is the Asia edition. So I'm going to be running through every single one of these books, and there's a lot, telling you about them. Some of them are originally written in English, some of them have been translated into English. All of the translator information will be on the screen because it's important to credit translators and celebrate the amazing work that they do so that we get to read things like this. Nearly knocked my camera over, but there's going to be a little mix of modern and contemporary books and also classics from each of these countries. Firstly, I wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who watched and commented on the European edition of this video, where I showed you a book from every country in Europe. That was so fun, and there was such a great discussion about other authors and other books from different countries in Europe in the comment section. Now, secondly, a little bit of housekeeping. So, though I have done so much research, sometimes it's really hard to find not only to find a book that has been originally written in English or translated into English from a particular country, but also to find one that is actively available to buy, because some of them are no longer in print. Some of them, trust me, I've been to so many bookstores that specialize in world literature and I've just not been able to find a book from specific countries, and even the booksellers couldn't think of one or find one for me. So I've tried so hard, but this is where you, my incredible community of book lovers, come in. Because if there are any gaps, for example, in the video that I did on Europe, I couldn't find a book from Slovakia or Malta. And I saw so many comments being like, why do you hate Slovakia? Me and Slovakia have zero beef. It's all good. I actually would love to go to Slovakia. Lovely people in the comment section from Slovakia or from Malta messaged me about books that I could get thanks to their local knowledge. So if there are any countries that are missing and you know of a book from that country that I could read, please let me know. Please leave it in the comment section and I will try my best to acquire it. And then my plan is basically when I get to the end of this series, I'll do an extra video where I show you books from all of the countries that I missed along the way, now that we kind of have this pooled wisdom thanks to the comment section. The plan is to find a book from every single country. So we're gonna go in alphabetical order, starting with Afghanistan. This book is called My Pen is the Wing of a Bird. And the interesting thing about this is that it's actually by a range of Afghan women. So let me read you this. So, a woman's fortitude saves her village from disaster. A teenager explores their identity in a moment of quiet. A petition writer reflects on his life as a dog lies nursing her puppies. A tormented girl tries to find love through a horrific act. A headmaster makes his way to work, treading the fine line between life and death. My Pen is the Wing of a Bird is a landmark collection, the first anthology of short fiction by Afghan women in English translation. 18 writers tell stories that are both unique and universal, of family, of work, of childhood, friendship, war, gender identity, and cultural traditions. The result of more than 2 years' collaboration between writers, translators, and editors, this collection introduces extraordinary writers with original, vital, and unexpected stories to tell. My Pen is the Wing of a Bird comes at a pivotal moment in Afghanistan's history when these voices must be heard. And there's multiple languages, there's an interesting introduction, and afterward this really feels like an important collection, shedding light on the myriad experiences of women in Afghanistan. Next up we have Bahrain. Yama is by Sarah A. Al-Shafai. So Khadija is a child who is forced into womanhood early. She is compelled to marry a man much older than she through arranged marriage and lives a world of hardships from then on. Her mother dies soon after her wedding, leaving her with a husband she hardly knows and 2 brothers she knows nothing of. Khadija learns to love her husband and wins his love in return. But just as she thought her life was a beautiful love story, her precious son dies from a scorpion bite. Grief and sadness become her new best friends. Her husband, whom she can't live without, abandons her without warning, and she is left to raise and support 8 children while pregnant with the 9th. Her brother, who finds out about his sister's misfortune and the truth behind his brother-in-law's actions, returns to Bahrain to take care of Khadija, but when he finds out about his cheating wife, falls ill with sadness and grief and soon dies. Khadija forces herself to survive with the faith and patience she has inherited from her late mother, and faces life's war with strength, courage, and pride. She grows with her children, she grows with time, she grows with history, her country's history. She succeeds in raising wonderful children who go through their own share of happiness and misfortune. Her husband, who married another woman for money, returns, filled with regret and in a wheelchair. I have to say, this kind of this blurb feels like it's giving away a lot of spoilers. Like, usually the blurb is kind of what happens in the first couple chapters and then we find out the rest in the book. This feels like it's giving me a plot summary on the back. If all of this happens in the first 2 chapters, I am amazed by what else is going to go on in this woman's life. Anyway, though Khadija was hurt and angry, she opens her arms for him with love and forgiveness. But watching him die in her arms takes her back in time as she goes through the grief all over again. As a great-grandmother, Khadija sits back to watch her triumph, her success, and dies with dignity, leaving behind a legend to be remembered by many. Okay, if you if you didn't want a spoiler of this book, I'm really sorry. I think that I just may have spoiled it for myself as well. I felt like we all just lived Khadija's entire lifetime together just through the blurb, but I'll find out what else this book has in store, and I'm sure the writing is absolutely stunning as well when I get around to reading this one, so that's Bahrain. From Bangladesh, we have In the Light of What We Know, which is a title I absolutely love. I am a sucker for a long title. If your title is a sentence long, I will be buying your book. In the Light of What We Know is described by Joyce Carol Oates as a unique work of fiction bearing witness to much that is unspeakable. James Wood from The New Yorker calls Zia Haider Rahman a deep and subtle storyteller. Early one morning in 2008, a man arrives, unannounced and agitated, at the home of an old friend. The friend takes a minute to place him. They have not seen each other since Zafar disappeared suddenly some years before. Zafar has returned to make a confession of unsettling power. Told in the quiet of a London house, in a conversation as epic as it is intimate, his story is, in many ways, the story of our century. So that I am very, very, very intrigued to read. And one thing about me is I am nosy, so I need to know what that confession is. This next book is from Bhutan. It's called Tales in Colour and Other Stories, and it's by Kunzang Choden. What are the new realities that confront Bhutanese women today? What challenges do they face when their tradition-bound, close-knit family life is suddenly replaced by the anonymity of an urban existence? These deceptively simple stories uncover both the complexity and irony of women's lives in contemporary Bhutan. They show how ordinary lives, choices and experiences are both remarkable and poignant. In I Am a Small Person, which is one of the short stories, a despised woman uses her femininity as a means to control a man. The young girl in I Won't Ask Mother, another short story, suddenly feels empowered and confident when she makes a decision without consulting her mother. All the stories take place in rural settings, to which creeping urbanization brings gradual change, and tensions surface between the new and the old, or the traditional and the modern. For many rural women, being able to connect to the city and all its perceived glamour and power is a very real aspiration, and one that is sensitively dealt with in stories like Look at Her Belly Button and The Photograph. Kunzang Choden is one of Bhutan's leading writers. Well, I can't wait to experience her work. This next book is The Forlorn Adventure by Amir Falik, and this is from Brunei. In the year 2025, it's crazy to think that people were writing like futuristic novels set in 2025, and that's next year. Like the way that I would have said 10 years ago that in 2025 we'll have like hovering cars everywhere and rockets just whizzing around cities. I don't know. The fact that 2025 is next year and that's not futuristic anymore is crazy. But anyway, that's when this book is set. Ajon Amir is honoured to be the first Bruneian astronaut. He wrote a computer software capable of decrypting complex codes and break ancient languages. His sole mission is to install this software personally at the newly constructed space station on the moon. But little does he know, the world he's leaving behind is about to change, possibly forever. Will his simple task go according to plan, or will it spiral out of control? So for the space lovers among us, this is The Forlorn Adventure. Next, from Cambodia, we have First They Killed My Father. This is by Luong Ang. It was an international bestseller. It's now a Netflix film by Angelina Jolie. A moving story of war crimes and desperate actions. The unnerving strength of a small girl and her triumphant spirit as she survived the Cambodian genocide under Pol Pot's brutal regime. Until the age of 5, Luong Ang lived in Phnom Penh, one of 7 children of a high-ranking government official. She was a precocious child who loved the open city markets, fried crickets, chicken fights, and sassing her parents, while her beautiful mother worried that Luong was a troublemaker. her beloved father knew Luong was a clever girl. So I'm realizing as I'm reading this that this is a story about the Khmer Rouge. This is actually not fiction, this is more of a memoir. So I will definitely be reading this book and I'm very, very glad that I bought it. But because I am trying to mostly recommend fiction, I have a recommendation for you still. This is one that I've already read, but it's this amazing collection of Cambodian short stories called After Parties. It's by Anthony Viesna So. It's immersive and unsparing and brutal, but there are also moments of comic relief as well. It's about immigrant communities, it's about queer communities, and mostly about Cambodian American people and their identity in the wake of the Khmer Rouge. So 2 Cambodian books here. First They Killed My Father sounds like an absolute must read, but because I am trying to mostly recommend fiction, I also wanted to recommend this as well. This next book is from China. It's called Ninth Building. It's by Zhou Jingxi, and it's a fascinating collection of vignettes drawn from the author's experience growing up during the Cultural Revolution, first as a boy in Beijing, and then as a teenager exiled to the countryside. Zhou poetically captures a side of the Cultural Revolution that is less talked about, the sheer tedium and waste of young life, as well as the gallows humour that accompanies such desperate situations. Jeremy Chang's enthralling translation of this important work of fiction was awarded a Penheim grant. It looks like these vignettes range between kind of 2 to 5 pages each. I actually studied the Cultural Revolution in China at school, so this is something I am desperate to read. So that's Ninth Building. This one is an absolute beast. This is from India. It's called Tomb of Sand. It won the International Booker Prize. And I was so lucky because in 2022, I was at Hay Festival where the winners of the International Booker Prize did their first in-person event. So they basically were like meeting kind of for the first time. They worked on the translation over email, and this was one of the first times that they actually did an event in person together. And hearing the way that they bounced off one another and spoke about the art of creating this book and bringing it to the English-speaking world was absolutely enthralling. And ever since then, I have been desperate to read it. It's by Geetanjali Shree, and this is the description. In northern India, an 80-year-old woman slips into a deep depression at the death of her husband, then resurfaces to gain a new lease of life. Her determination to fly in the face of convention, including striking up a friendship with a Hijra person, confuses her Bohemian daughter, who is used to thinking of herself as the more modern of the two. Rather than respond to tragedy with seriousness, Geetanjali Shree's playful tone and exuberant wordplay results in a book that is engaging, funny, and utterly original, at the same time as being an urgent and timely protest against the destructive impact of borders and boundaries, whether between religions, countries, or genders. Wow. I'm so happy to be finally reading that book. Next up, Indonesia. This is Birth Canal. It's by Dias Novita Wuri, and it's a dazzling novella from a rising star of Indonesian literature, exploring generational legacies, lost loves, the damage that war does to men, and the damage that men do to women. In today's Jakarta, an unnamed man tells the story of his lifelong friend and unrequited love, and what happened on the day she vanished. Full of surprising turns and in stunning prose, Birth Canal tells the interwoven stories of women that span time and history. And I'm especially excited to read this because I'm actually attending a book festival in Bali in October, so I'm gonna get to meet loads of really amazing Indonesian writers, which I'm just counting down the days to. Also, what's interesting about this book is that it was translated by the author herself. So that is Birth Canal. Next up we have Iran, and this is Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. Electrifying and profound, brazen, profane, and often very funny, the first novel from the ferociously gifted young talent Kaveh Akbar heralds the arrival of an extraordinary new voice in contemporary fiction. I love when poets write novels because they are just so meticulously crafted, not a word is wasted. So Cyrus Shams, the novel's hero, is a young man grappling with an inheritance of violence and loss, a mother whose plane was shot down over the skies of the Persian Gulf in a senseless accident, and a father whose life in America was circumscribed by killing chickens on a factory farm in the Midwest. Cyrus is a drunk, an addict, and a poet whose obsession with martyrs leads him into the mysteries of his past, towards an uncle who rode through Iranian battlefields dressed as the Angel of Death, and toward his mother through a painting discovered in a Brooklyn art gallery that suggests she might not have been who or what she seemed. Cyrus is guided on his journey by the voices of artists, poets, and kings, and delivered in the novel's unforgettable final pages to a world that teems with unforeseen wonders. Martyr is a work of gut-wrenching anguish and exquisite consolation, a book that sees into every corner of the human heart, that faces down shame and despair, and emerges with a vision of humanity that is capacious and full of grace. This is an astonishing debut. I need to take that in for a second. Holy moly. From Iraq, we have Frankenstein in Baghdad. This is by Ahmed Sadawi. Strange, violent, and wickedly funny, says The Guardian. Baghdad's new literary star, says The New York Times. And this was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. A satirical reimagining of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. How good does that sound? From the rubble-strewn streets of Baghdad, Hadi collects body parts from the dead, which he stitches together to form a corpse. He claims he does it to force the government to recognise the parts as real people and give them a proper burial. But when the corpse goes missing, a wave of eerie murders sweeps across the city, and reports stream in of a horrendous-looking, flesh-eating monster that cannot be killed. At first, it's the guilty he attacks, but soon, it's anyone who crosses his path. Frankenstein in Baghdad brilliantly captures the horror and black humour of a city at war. It is a darkly delightful novel. Okay. From Japan, I'm sure you've seen this book absolutely everywhere. It is on table displays in every bookstore right now. I feel like everyone is reading this book. This is Butter by Asako Yazuki. You guys know that I love reading Japanese literature. I have a whole shelf of it up there. And this is the next book from Japan that I'm really, really excited to sink my teeth into. So, gourmet cook Minako Kaji sits in Tokyo detention house convicted of the serial murders of lonely businessmen who she is said to have seduced with her delicious home cooking. The case has captured the nation's imagination, but Kaji refuses to speak with the press. That is, until journalist Rika Machida writes a letter asking for her recipe for beef stew, and Kaji can't resist but write back. Rika, the only woman in her news office, works late each night, rarely cooking more than ramen. As the visits unfold between her and Kaji, they seem closer to a masterclass in food than journalistic research. Rika hopes this gastronomic exchange will help soften the steely Kaji, but it seems that Rika might be the one changing. With each meal she eats, something is awakening in her body. Might she and Kaji have more in common than she once thought? A runaway international bestseller inspired by the real case of the con woman known as the Konkatsu Killer, Asako Yazuki's Butter, translated by Polly Barton, is a vivid, unsettling exploration of misogyny, obsession, romance, and the transgressive pleasures of food in Japan. In fact, even my t-shirt is from Japan. I bought this in a little coffee shop when I was traveling in Japan last year. Jordan, this is The Bride of a Man. The Bride of a Man was a huge and controversial bestseller when first published in Arabic, taking a sharp-eyed look at the intersecting lives of 4 women and 1 gay man in Jordan's historical capital, Amman, a city deeply imbued with its nation's traditions and taboos. When Rana finds herself not only falling for a man of the wrong faith, but also getting into trouble with him, where can they go to escape? Can Hayat's secret liaisons really suppress the memories of her abusive father? When Ali is pressurized by society's homophobia into a fake heterosexual marriage, how long can he maintain the illusion? And when spinsterhood and divorce spell social catastrophe, is living a lie truly the best option for Leica? What must she do to avoid reaching her expiry date at the age of 30 like her sister Salma, Jordan's secret blogger, and a self-confessed spinster with a plot up her sleeve to defy her city's prejudices? These 5 young lives come together and come apart in ways that are distinctly modern, yet as unique and timeless as the city itself. I love a good character study. From Kuwait, next we have Our Man in Kuwait. This is by Louise Burfitt Dons. It's a historical spy thriller set in 1960. With Soviet backing, Iraq plans to invade. Gordon Carlyle lives in the expat community of Ahmadi with little to worry about other than when to next don his dinner jacket. Following contact by an MI6 agent, everything changes. Even marriage to his beautiful new wife, Anahita, breaks down as he becomes a suspect in a chain of deaths in the Protectorate. Ian Fleming's time in Kuwait is recorded at first hand as Britain prepares to meet Iraqi forces head-on with Operation Vantage. This is a colonial-era thriller set against the background of big power conflict, the ultimate timepiece tinderbox of sun, sex, and Spies. So one for the James Bond fans over here. Moving on to Kyrgyzstan, I love this title, The Day Lost More Than 100 Years. This is by Chingiz Aytmatov, and the novel unfolds within the span of a single day. Okay, so it's giving Mrs. Dalloway, it's giving Ulysses. This focuses on the journey of a railway worker as he endeavours to bury his deceased friend in a cemetery often referred to as Mother's Grave. During this trek, he shares his personal history and weaves in elements of Central Asian folklore. Oh, this sounds so up my street because I love reading about mythology and folklore, so yes to this. Big yes to this. Furthermore, the narrative introduces a subplot involving two cosmonauts, one American and one Soviet, who establish contact with an intelligent extraterrestrial life form and embark on a journey to a new planet, while aboard a space station jointly operated by the United States and the Soviet Union. And then there's a little bit about the author at the bottom, which is really interesting. It said he tended to portray the world as he perceived it, rife with prejudice, cruelty, sexism, patriarchal brutality, and a general lack of harmony in human interactions. Amid this, however, there was also beautiful moments of human kindness, wisdom, love and devotion that he depicted, all set against the backdrop of the enchanting Central Asian landscape that he eloquently described. And that is why I'm making these videos, to discover books like that. From Laos, we have How to Pronounce Knife. This is by Suvankam Tamavongsa, described as breathtaking, sharp, vital, and spellbinding on the cover. So I'm pretty sure this is a short story collection. So an ex-boxer turned nail salon worker falls for a pair of immaculate hands. In another story, a mother and daughter harvest earthworms in the middle of the night. In another story, a country music-obsessed housewife abandons her family for fantasy. And in another, a young girl's love for her father transcends language. This stunning debut captures the day-to-day lives of immigrants and refugees in a nameless city, illuminating hopes, disappointments, love affairs, and above all, the pursuit of a place to belong. That is How to Pronounce Knife. Next is Lebanon, and this is Voices of the Lost by Hoda Barakat, winner of the International Prize for Arabic Fiction. One of Lebanon's greatest gifts to literature, extraordinary. This is a devastating story of displacement, war, and the unlikely glimmer of hope in the dark. In an unnamed country torn apart by war, 6 strangers are compelled to share their darkest secrets. Taking pen to paper, each attempts to put in writing what they can't bring themselves to say to the person they love: mother, father, brother, and lost love. Their words form a chain of dark confessions, none of which reaches the intended recipient, but their consequences will ripple through each other's lives, affecting strangers in ways the writer could never have anticipated. Luminous and haunting, Voices of the Lost tells the moving story of characters living on the periphery, battling displacement, poverty, and the demons within themselves. From one of today's most talented Arabic writers, this is the story of lives intimately woven together in a society that is tearing itself apart. That is Voices of the Lost. Now, briefly before I move on to the next book, I'm very excited to let you know that today's video is brought to you by Squarespace. You see how I make my websites using Squarespace? Very demure, very mindful. I'm not like you other girls, I don't have coding experience. I'm not an expert web developer. I use Squarespace's incredible array of templates, which you can customize, make your own, bring your vision to life. Very cutesy. It felt topical, it felt like something I should do. But anyway, I love Squarespace. There are loads of incredible features. For example, AI SEO to make sure that your website appears on search engines. Your customers have access to flexible payments. You can start a blog, you can create an email sign-up list. Anything you want, Squarespace has you covered. So you can actually head to squarespace.com right now for a free trial. And then when you're ready to launch your beautiful new website, use the code JackEdwards at squarespace.com/JackEdwards to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Very mindful, very demure, very cutesy. Thank you so much to Squarespace for working with me on this video. And now, the next book. Another corker of a title. This is The Weight of Our Sky. It's by Hannah Alkaf, and this is from Malaysia. Melati Ahmad has imagined her mother's death countless times. Plagued by gruesome thoughts she believes are put into her head by a jinn, Melati has developed an intricate set of tapping rituals to tame the monster within and keep her mother safe. But there are things that Melati can't protect her mother from. On the evening of May 13, 1969, racial tensions in Melati's home city of Kuala Lumpur boil over. The Chinese and Malays are at war, and Melati and her mother become separated by a city in flames. With a 24-hour curfew in place and all lines of communication down, it will take the help of a Chinese boy named Vincent and all the courage and grit in Melati's arsenal to overcome the violence on the streets, her own prejudices, and her jinn's surging power, and make it back to the one person she can't risk losing. Her mother. I've been trying to come to Malaysia for so many years. I have had 3 trips individually cancelled for various reasons, COVID being a huge one. So I will at some point make it to Malaysia, but in the meantime, I'm gonna read this. Okay, this is where I really struggled. I could not find books from the Maldives, Mongolia, or Myanmar. So please send me recommendations because I'm gutted. 3 in a row that I couldn't find. The M's were just cursed for me, unfortunately. And I tried so hard to find books from these countries and I just couldn't. So if you have any recommendations, please let me know. The next one I could find, however, is from Nepal. And this is The Tutor of History by Manjushri Thapa. In the late 1990s, a few years into constitutional democracy in Nepal, and the government has collapsed. In Karinitar, a small town, 4 separate lives come together during the campaign for fresh elections. One is a disillusioned communist who gives private tuitions in history. Another is an alcoholic who is the chairman of the People's Party's district committee. One is a large-hearted former British Gurkha, and the other is a reclusive young widow who runs a tea stall near the town's only bus stop. As the elections approach and the crises in their lives mount, they must choose not only for their country, but also for their own individual futures. That is the tutor. So close. That is The Tutor of History. This next book is called Friend. This is actually a North Korean book, and it's by Peek Nam Nyong, described as a tale of marital intrigue, abuse, and divorce in North Korea. A woman in her 30s comes to a courthouse petitioning for a divorce. As the judge who hears her statement begins to investigate the case, the story unfolds into a broader consideration of love and marriage. This was a bestseller in North Korea, where the author continues to live and write. Friend illuminates a side of life in the DPRK that Western readers have never before encountered. So I'm very grateful this has been translated into English and that we get to read it. That is Friend. From Oman, we have Bitter Orange Tree. This is actually by Joka Al-Hati, who also wrote the Booker Prize winning novel Celestial Bodies, which I've spoken about on this channel before. So this will be my second book of hers, my second book from Oman. This is about an Omani student at a British university who is caught between the past and the present. As she attempts to form friendships and assimilate into Britain, she can't help but ruminate on the relationships that have been central to her life. Most prominent is her strong emotional bond with Bint Amir, a woman who she always thought of as her grandmother, who passed away shortly before she left the Arabian Peninsula. As the historical narrative of Bin Amir's challenged circumstances unfurl in captivating fragments, so too does our character's isolated and unfulfilled present. One narrative segues into another as time slips and dreams begin to mingle with memories. Bitter Orange Tree is a profound exploration of social status, wealth, desire, and female agency. It presents a mosaic portrait of one young woman's attempt to understand the roots she has grown from, and so envisage an adulthood in which her own power of happiness might find the freedom necessary to bear fruit and flourish. I feel like it becomes redundant after a while in these videos to keep describing every single book as interesting or fascinating, or I can't wait to read it. I bought all of these books because I thought they sounded good, but really that sounds amazing. So I'm like a broken record just saying how good all of these books sound, but they do! It's the truth. Anyways, this next one is called An Abundance of Wild Roses. This is from Pakistan and it was written by Ferial Ali Gohar. This one is from Pakistan and it was written by Ferial Ali Gohar. In the Black Mountains of Pakistan, the discovery of an unconscious, unknown man is the first snowball in an avalanche of chaos. The head of the village is beset with problems, including the injured stranger, and failing to find his way out. His daughter receives a love letter and incurs her father's wrath. A lame boy foretells disaster, but nobody is listening. Trapped in terrible danger, a wolf dog is battling ice and death to save a soldier's life. Beaten by her addict husband for bearing him only daughters, a woman is pregnant again, but can this child save her? All the while, the spirit of the mountain keeps a baleful eye on the doings of the humans in a land woven with myth, chained with tradition, and afflicted by ongoing conflict and the march of progress. Can the villagers find a way to coexist with nature that doesn't destroy either of them? That is so multifaceted and unique. Damn, that is an abundance of wild roses. Oh no, my camera's gonna die. I've been yapping away, 1 sec. Okay, we're so back. This next book is a Palestinian book. This is by Susan Abalawa, and it's called Against the Loveless World. It was the winner of the Palestine Book Award, and it's about a woman who is sitting in an Israeli prison. Many in the world outside call her a terrorist, and just as many call her a revolutionary, a hero, but the truth is more complicated. She was named for the river her mother crossed when she fled Israel's invasion of Palestine, and grew up into a girl who carried in her bones the desperation of being a refugee. She was a woman who went to Palestine and found books, friends, politics, and a purpose. Her name is Na, and she sits in a cell and tells her story. That is Against the Loveless World. From the Philippines, we have La Tercera. This is by Gina Apostol. It's described as a whirlwind of narrative, profoundly rewarding. Rosario, a Filipina actress in New York City, has just learned of her mother's death in the Philippines. Instead of rushing home, she puts off her return by embarking on a remote investigation into her family's history and her mother's supposed inheritance, a place called La Tercera, which may or may not actually exist. Rosario catalogues generations of Delgado family bequests and detritus, maps of uncertain purposes, rusted chicken coops, a secret journal, the words to songs sung at the family home during visits from Imelda Marcos. Each life Rosario explores opens into an array of other lives and raises a multitude of new questions. But as the search for La Tercera becomes increasingly labyrinthine, Rosario's mother and the entire Delgado family emerge in all their dizzying complexity. Traitors and heroes, reactionaries and revolutionaries. Meanwhile, another narrative takes shape of the country's erased history of exploitation and slaughter at the hands of American occupying forces. I always really enjoy when a book merges domestic life and the family life and an individual's experience with international and national politics. It's a great way to learn about different places, different cultures and their history, and so that's why I picked up this one. From Qatar we have The Corsair. This is by Abdulaziz Al Mahmoud, and it is the early 19th century, and the British government is fighting piracy on the high seas and campaigning against the expansion of Wahhabism in Arabia. Alliances and treaties are being sought with the Egyptian forces and with Ahama bin Jaber, a legendary pirate or corsair of the Gulf, charged with a grueling journey across seas and deserts to deliver a priceless gift to the Egyptian Pasha. A British army major forges an unlikely friendship with the Arabian corsair's rebellious son, a friendship that is tested and strengthened by a shared horror at the scenes unfolding around them. Based on historical events and already a bestseller in Arabic, this is a novel of ruthlessness, intrigue, and hope from an exciting new voice in the Arab world, and written by a Qatari author, so there you go. From Russia, you know how much I've been loving Dostoevsky's books. I've been working my way through them, and this is my next one. This is Devils. In 1869, a young Russian was strangled, shot through the head, and thrown into a pond. His crime? A wish to leave a small group of revolutionaries from which he had become alienated. Dostoevsky takes this real-life catastrophe as the subject and culmination of Devils, a title that refers to the young radicals themselves and also to the materialistic ideas that possessed the minds of many thinking people in Russian society at the time. It's a satirical portrait of the revolutionaries, with their naivety, ludicrous single-mindedness, and readiness for murder and destruction. And though it might seem exaggerated, but we also have to consider their all too recognisable descendants in the real world ever since. This prophetic account of modern morals and politics, with its 50-odd characters, amazing events and challenging ideas, is seen by some critics as Dostoevsky's masterpiece. Do you see why I wanted to read this book? From Saudi Arabia, we have Girls of Riyadh. This is by Raja Al Sania, and it is about a woman whose faith in her new husband is not exactly returned. Sadim is a little too willing to please her fiancé, and Michelle is half American and the wrong class for her boyfriend's family. Lamis works hard with little time for love. The Girls of Riyadh are young, attractive, and living by Saudi Arabia's strict cultural traditions. Well, not quite. In between sneaking out behind their parents' backs, dating, shopping, watching American TV and having fun, the girls of Riyadh are young, attractive, and living by Saudi Arabia's strict cultural traditions. Well, not quite. In between sneaking out behind their parents' backs, dating, shopping, watching American TV and having fun, they're still trying to be good little Muslim girls. That is, pleasing their families and their men. But can you be a 21st century girl and a Saudi girl? The Financial Times describes it as a novel that captures it all, a revealing study of one of the world's most secretive societies. That sounds like a must-read. And that is The Girls of Riyadh. Another title I absolutely love, this one is from Singapore. It's called And the Walls Come Crumbling Down. It's by Tanya de Rosario, and it says at the top, if home is not a building, what is it? If home is not a place, what is it? If home is not a person, what is it? I just personally have always been really interested in the concept of home and whether home can be a portable thing. So this is so up my street. And The Walls Come Tumbling Down features a young queer woman in Singapore unable to find safety and refuge in her biological family or country of birth. But she insists on home and history. Refusing sanitized orderliness, she refuses to build a life that embraces the mess and excess of human existence. Part queer memoir and part poetic rumination, Tanya de Rosario's work masterfully lays bare the love, pain, and precarity experienced by those who must forge their own home. These pages contain a series of interlocking short pieces that reach right into your guts and squeeze them without mercy. Sign me up. That is like the perfect description of a book to me. That makes me want to read it even more. So it's gonna break my heart. Perfect, sign me up. Thank you very much. Now, you guys know I have voraciously been reading Sri Lankan literature, and this is the next one I'm excited to read. This is Blue-Skinned Gods. It's by S.J. Sindhu. Roxane Gay says, the richness of this story will take hold of you and never let go. Weirdly, this book is very heavy, like compared to other books of the same size. I can't explain that. If anyone can, please tell me. S.J. Sindhu is a Sri Lankan writer, and this book takes place in Tamil Nadu in India. A boy named Kalki, born with blue skin, believes he is the Hindu god Vishnu and that he can perform miracles. The truth, though, is much darker. As Kalki struggles to extract himself from under his father's thumb, he must also reconcile with the idea that everything he's ever been told might not be true. When his father drags him on a tour of America, Kalki seizes his chance to explore what life as an ordinary man might actually be like. Pulled between India and America and his father's web of control, Kalki must find his true place in the world. So that is Blue-Skinned Gods, and look at that beautiful edition as well. My pick from South Korea is a book by the legend Bora Chung, and this is called Your Utopia. Bora Chung's inimitable blend of horror, absurdity, and dark humour reaches its peak in these tales of loss and discovery, dystopia and idealism, death and immortality. In a thrilling translation by the acclaimed Anton Her, readers will experience a variety of possible fates for humanity, from total demise via a disease whose only symptom is casual cannibalism, yeah, you heard that right, to a world in which even dreams can be monitored and used to convict people of crimes. In the Centre for Immortality Research, a low-level employee runs herself ragged planning a gala for donors, only to be blamed for the chaos that ensues during the event in front of the mysterious celebrity benefactors hoping to live forever. But she can't be fired. No one can. In another short story, A Song for Sleep, an AI elevator in an apartment complex develops a tender, one-sided love for an elderly relative. Seeds traverses the final frontier of capitalism's destruction of the planet, but nature always creeps back to life. If you haven't yet experienced the fruits of Chung's singular imagination, your utopia is waiting. This book is from Syria. It's called Death is Hard Work, which is a cracking title. I love that. And it's described like this. Death is Hard Work is a tale of three people embarking on an absurd quest, an unforgettable journey into a contemporary heart of darkness. At a hospital in Damascus, Syria, Abdel Latif's final wish is to be buried in the family plot near Aleppo, just a 2-hour drive away. Bulbul, his youngest son, persuades his estranged brother and sister to accompany him and their father's body to the ancestral village. But Syria is a war zone, and the trials that confront the family on their journey will have enormous consequences for them all. From Taiwan, I have this book called Green Island. It's by Shauna Yang Ryan, set in Taipei on February 28th, 1947. As an uprising rocks Taiwan, a young doctor is taken away from his newborn daughter by Chinese nationalists on charges of speaking out against the government. Although he eventually returns to his family, his arrival is marked by alienation from his loved ones and paranoia among his community. Years later, this troubled past follows his youngest daughter to America, where, as a mother and wife, she too is forced to decide between what is right and what might save her family. This is the same choice she witnessed her father make many years before. The book is a stunningly lyrical story of a family and a nation grappling with the nuances of complicity and survival. Green Island raises the question, how far would you go for the ones you love? The Seattle Times calls it an intricately, gracefully told tale that blends war history, suspense, and a woman's coming of age. This is called Arid Dreams. It's a book from Thailand by Duanwad Pimwana. In 13 stories that investigate ordinary and working class Thailand, characters aspire for more, but remain suspended in routine. A politician's wife imagines her life had her husband's accident been fatal. An elevator attendant feels himself wasting away while trapped immobile at his station all day. Witty, insightful, and disturbing, this collection explores class, gender, and disenchantment in a changing country. Now listen, there have been great titles in this video, but I think this one might take the crown for the best one, because this is an absolute banger. We measure the earth with our bodies. This is by Tsering Yangsom Lama, a novelist from Tibet. In the wake of China's invasion of Tibet throughout the 1950s, Lama and her younger sister Tenki arrive at a refugee camp in Nepal. They survived the dangerous journey across the Himalayas, but their parents did not. As Lama, haunted by the loss of her homeland and her mother, a village oracle, tries to rebuild a life amid a shattered community, hope arrives in the form of a young man named Samphel and his uncle, who bring with him the ancient statue of the Nameless Saint. And the statue of the Nameless Saint is a relic known to vanish and reappear in times of need. Decades later, the sisters are separated, and Tenki is living with Lamo's daughter, Dolma, in Toronto. While Tenki works as a cleaner and struggles with traumatic memories, Dolma vies for a place as a scholar of Tibetan studies. But when Dolma comes across the Nameless Saint in a collector's vault, she must decide what she is willing to do for her community, even if it means risking her dreams. Such an interesting conversation about who has the right to display things like that, to display relics of a culture that is not your own. So I guess she's gonna grapple with whether she should take it back. Breathtaking in its scope and powerful in its intimacy, We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies is a gorgeously written meditation on colonization, displacement, and the lengths we'll go to remain connected to our families and ancestral lands. That is, we measure the earth with our bodies. From the UAE, this is Temporary People. It's by Deepak Unikrishnan and was the winner of the Restless Books Prize for New Immigrant Writing. This debut novel shines a light on a little-known world with compassion and keen insight. The temporary people are invisible people, but Unikrishnan brings them to us with compassion, intelligence, and heart. This is why novels matter. Guest workers of the United Arab Emirates embody multiple worlds and identities and long for home in a fantastical debut work of fiction. The author's crisp, imaginative prose packs a punch, and his whimsical depiction of characters who oscillate between two lands on either side of the Arabian Sea unspools the kind of immigrant narratives that are rarely told, an enchanting, unparalleled anthem of displacement and repatriation. That is Temporary People. I only have 2 books left to tell you about. This one is from Uzbekistan. It's called The Devil's Dance. It's by Hamid Ismailov, a mesmerizing and terrifying novel of tremendous range, energy, and potency. This brilliant translation establishes Ismailov as a major literary figure on the international scene, a writer of immense poetic power. That's interesting, but does not tell me what The Devil's Dance is going to be about, so I'm just going to quickly Google. Okay, so interestingly, this was banned in Uzbekistan for 27 years, set on New Year's Eve in 1938 when a writer is taken from his home by the Soviet secret police and thrown into a prison. To distract himself from the physical and psychological torment of beatings and mindless interrogations, he attempts to mentally reconstruct the novel he was writing at the time of his arrest. And that story he was writing is based on the tragic life of an Uzbek poet queen. Okay, finally, we have a book from Vietnam. This is called Banyan Moon. It's by Tao Tai, described as atmospheric, riveting, and radiant. Anne is already at a crossroads when she gets the call that her beloved grandma Min has died. With a beautiful home and a charming boyfriend, Anne has built a seemingly perfect life, but it all crumbles away with one positive pregnancy test. With her carefully planned future now in question, Anne returns home to Florida to face her estranged mother, Huang. Under the same roof for the first time in years, mother and daughter must face the simmering questions of their past without the one person who's always held them together. Running parallel to this is Min's story, as she goes from a teenager living in the shadow of the Vietnam War to a determined young mother immigrating to America in search of a better life. And when Anne makes a shocking discovery in the Banyan house's attic, long-buried secrets come to light. It's described as spellbinding and intricately layered. And that is Banyan Moon. And that is my list of books. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you found a new book that you're excited to read. I hope that these kind of little summaries have given you an insight into what Asian literature is out there for you to read and for you to experience and to learn more about. And maybe this will unlock a new favourite author for you or a new favourite type of writing. Who knows? So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any other recommendations from any of these countries or the few countries that I unfortunately could not find a book from. Let me know in the comment section down below and we will fix that gap in the knowledge together. We'll plug that hole. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. All the best, stay in touch. Follow me on Instagram, on TikTok, on my second channel. Anywhere you like, I'll be. So thanks for watching. All the best, stay in touch. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye!